So Daniel was meditating. And as usual, the monkey mind, the monkey chatter voice started speaking to him, saying, "Oh, you forgot to send that email. Oh, did you leave the stove on? Are you going to fail at that?" And he was hearing all these voices. And he decided to tell that voice inside of him, "Enough, stop." And that voice kind of laughed and said, "Oh yeah, I'm just going to get louder." And he smiled. Daniel smiled because he knew that that voice was not in charge. It may have been loud, but it wasn't in charge. And he said to that voice, "You're not the boss of me." And that chatter voice got quiet. And it wasn't judging. And it wasn't taking sides. And it was just calm. In that moment, Daniel realized that voice is always there. It's always making itself known. But the decisions that he made weren't always by that voice. That there was something within him that was in charge. There's something within him that was the boss of him, and it wasn't that voice. And so he realized that an enlightenment doesn't have to be a big aha moment, that a spiritual advancement can be just telling that monkey chatter, "You're not the boss of me." So I love that story because so often, that comes from, we hear children say that, right? "You're not the boss of me." When they're about 5 years old, they seem to get that. We don't know where it comes from, but they all instinctively seem to know, "You're not the boss of me." My kids told that to me too. They tell each other. Yesterday, we had been in Hawaii the last couple weeks, and so yesterday, we've been at sea level, right? So yesterday I went for a run here in altitude, and it was hard. And so I hadn't gotten very far, and I had to stop and walk and catch my breath. And usually when I do that, I have to keep doing that. Like, I can't get through I only run 3 miles now. I used to do more when I was younger, but I can't get through it without stopping several times. So I was working with this material, the master of your thinking, be the master of your thinking. And you're not the boss of me. And I thought, that's a belief I don't want to hold anymore. All I need to do is slow down my pace, and I think I can get through the rest of the run without stopping and just keep going. And so I said to those thoughts that were saying, "Oh, here we go. We're going to be stopping many times. You're not the boss of me." So I slowed down and I got through the run the whole way. Felt very good about that. We can do that. We can decide what voice we're going to listen to. What thoughts are we going to hold? So I want you to practice. Turn to somebody, maybe your spouse or partner, and say, "You're not the boss of me." How'd that feel? Feels kind of empowering, right? "You're not the boss of me." Now say, "I am the boss of me." Yeah, we use that "I am" power, that "I am" within us. We are the boss of our own, what we decide to think, what we decide to hold on to, what we decide to believe. We are the boss of that. And we become masters of our own thinking. We get to choose. In Unity, we call this, one of our 12 spiritual powers is the power of power. It sounds kind of redundant, but it's our ability to take dominion of our own consciousness, to decide what thoughts we're going to hold, to decide what thoughts we're going to just let flow, just let them go. Thoughts will keep coming always, many thoughts throughout the day, throughout our waking hours. And we get to decide which ones we're going to hold on to, which ones we're going to follow. It's our power of power. Now, we can use this power from a sense consciousness. We can sense consciousness. We can use it and based on whatever's going on in our lives, based on whatever we're seeing in the world, to decide what we're going to think about it. Take the example of what's going on in Iran this weekend. You can use this power of power if you feel relieved about what happened there. You can use it that way. If you feel fear and anger about what's happened in Iran, you can decide that you're not going to stay in that place of fear and anger. You can choose to hold a vision of peace. You can choose to hold a vision of harmony and love, in spite, not denying what's happening. But when we hold a vision of peace and love and harmony in spite of seeing war, we are raising the collective consciousness. We are calming ourselves. It's kind of a paradox to be able to hold both, but we are able to do that. With our power of power, we choose where we're going to hold our thoughts. It's not easy, but I think we need this, especially now. For me, I would rather work on myself and work on my consciousness level and where I'm at and be aware of what thoughts I'm holding on to, than be in a place of fear and anger. Or we can stay in a place of fear and anger. And what happens is that just repeats and repeats and repeats and perpetuates itself, and then that's all we see. So it's up to us. Mel Schwartz says this: thoughts tend to represent our beliefs and life experiences. To represent should be read literally as to re-present, because we often get stuck in deep basins of old habitual thought, and it continues to present our past over and over. Consider it this way: thinking is constantly active and new, whereas thought tends to be old and habitual. Thinking, if we're thinking, we want to have fresh thoughts. We want to come from a place of wholeness. We want to come from a place of heart coherence. Whereas thoughts tend to get bottled up, they tend to get stale, they tend to be things that we thought, and we get into these patterns, and it doesn't always serve us, it doesn't always uplift us. So it's our choice. In this year, our theme, the Year of Possibility, I'm working with a couple books, The Possibility Principle by Mel Schwartz, who I just quoted, and The Art of Possibility by Rosamund and Benjamin Zander. Both great books. I love this book, The Possibility Principle. Brings in quantum physics. It invites us to have a different worldview than what we've been holding, mostly for a few hundred years. Most of us have embedded in us a mechanistic worldview. This is inviting us into a participatory world where we are creators of our own experience of life, creators of our own reality. And this chapter that Mel wrote is called Be the Master of Your Own Thinking. Be the master of your own mind. Take self-mastery. Get self-mastery of it. As Emerson says, stand guard at the portal of your mind, because thoughts will come and go. We get to choose. So the Olympics just finished, right? And I love how, all of those athletes are extremely talented. And they had to have some kind of master over their thinking to get where they were, to get to be in the Olympics. And how heartbreaking it was to watch the U.S. figure skater, Ilya, Manolin, I can't remember his last name, to fall during his long program. And he said afterwards that it was completely a mental game for him. He wasn't mastering his thinking. It was heartbreaking to watch that. But then to watch the U.S. women's figure skater who took the gold medal and how she was off for a couple of years. She had retired from the sport, but something in her believed and knew and thoughts that helped her get to where she was. She was third going into the long program and ended up winning the gold. She mastered her thinking to be able to do that. I mean, they're all talented. But what goes through your mind? What thoughts do you hold as you're doing something that's so important to you, to do your best? We've all had moments of succeeding at something, at doing something really well, and we've all had moments of failure. What thoughts were you holding at that time? Think about it. What thoughts were you holding? We can change that. There's another quote by Mel Schwartz in this chapter. In the instant before you become your next thought, everything is possible. Developing a heightened level of awareness regarding our thoughts permits us to be responsive rather than reactive. Between the instantaneous reactions of our thoughts lies a wiser and deeper sense of self, poised to emerge. Isn't that what the Olympians do? Like they're poised to emerge. They're just poised to break out. Use those thoughts, use those thought patterns to be their best selves. To be their best selves. It's fascinating to watch that, to witness that. During this month of Ramadan, we can learn a lot from our Muslim brothers and sisters. This is the holy month of Ramadan, which is, they believe, that is when the Quran was received by Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad. And so for a whole month, they fast from sunup to sundown. And they spend that time in contemplation. They spend that time thinking about Allah or God. They spend that time with self-discipline. They spend that time being intentional and mindful and mastering their thinking, because you have to master your thinking when you're not eating all day, even drinking water all day, to be able to focus your mind somewhere else. They do that through intention and mindfulness and generosity and self-discipline, reflection. We do that too here with Lent. Lent is in preparation of Easter. Easter, where we celebrate new life. And we have these great little booklets in the bookstore. They come out every year by Unity. This one called Release and Reimagine, which I love the title of it because we're having a reimagine session in a couple weeks. Release what's not serving anymore and reimagine. What can we be? What can we be? What's our new edge of becoming? What is it? And in the beginning, there's a beautiful article by Reverend Linda Martello Whitsett, who, by the way, is going to be leading our women's retreat in July. She's going to be here for a whole weekend doing the Sunday services and then a personal prayer workshop afterwards on Sunday. Should be really wonderful. I just talked to her this week. But the power, she talks about the power, one of our 12 powers, the power of imagination, where we have the ability to create and vision and see something better for ourselves, a better life, a better way of being, more abundance, more joy, life always wanting to emerge and come forward and be more. I watched a movie yesterday called The Swimmers on Netflix. Anybody see it? Nobody's seen it. Nobody first service said they saw it either. Surprise, it's on Netflix. Anyway, it's a true story based, starts out in Syria. during their Civil War. I think it's 2014. And there's a family, there's 3 girls in the family, and the father was a competitive swimmer, and so he didn't have any boys, so he teaches his 2 older daughters how to swim, and they're competitive swimmers, and they're very good. And the second daughter is actually a national champion. And there's bombings going on all around them. And the 2 sisters, who are like 17 and 18, or something like that, decide that they don't want to live here anymore. It's dangerous. They've had friends die. They've been harassed. Their buses have been stopped and searched. They've been physically searched. And they tell their parents they want to leave the country. And their parents are 2 teenage girls, how can we let you leave? So they get a male cousin, one of their male cousins, to go with them. And they do leave, and they get their parents' blessing. And they say, if we get to Germany, Germany is letting refugees, letting their families come. So once we get to Germany, then we can bring you over. And the whole first half of the movie is their journey to Turkey, and then to Greece in a motorized raft where the motor stops working, and the girls get in the water and swim for 3.5 hours, pulling the boat to the shore. It's incredible. It's an incredible movie. They had to master their thinking to do this. They had to have such conviction to go through what they went through. They finally get to Berlin, where they wanted to go. And the younger girl, who had been a national champion swimmer, her goal was to go to the Olympics. In 2016, this is 2015, and she wants to go to Rio in 2016. That's her goal. You have to master your thinking. If you've got a high goal like that, and it's a year away, and you're a refugee, you don't have a homeland anymore. They end up having a refugee team because there's so many of them. And I don't want to tell you the rest of the story, because I hope you'll watch the movie, because it's really moving. It's really moving. But these girls had such conviction, and they were so determined to master their thinking. Think of all the thoughts that probably did come into their heads as they're making this trip from Syria to Berlin, and how hard that was, and how long it took, and how sore their feet were from walking, and how all the obstacles that they ran into, that they mastered their thinking. Had they let those other thoughts discourage them, they may not have been able to do what they did. They may not have ever gotten there. Mel Schwartz calls these negative thoughts that we get into these spirals of negative thoughts. He calls them literal thoughts, because what happens is we start thinking them like I'm not worthy, or I don't deserve a good life, or it's too dangerous, it's too hard. I can't do that, that's too hard. Or maybe I'll do it, when I retire, or maybe, all those thoughts that can get into our head. And they become literal thoughts because they become truth to us. They're not true, but they become our truth through which we live our lives. Mel Schwartz says this about these literal thoughts. Literal thought has us project our subjective belief onto others and ourselves and ascribe an objective reality to it. We start thinking that's real, that we don't deserve a better life, that we're unworthy, that, whatever, blah, 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 all that stuff that gets into our heads and that we play around with. It's not true. Last week we were at Centers for Spiritual Living, Kauai, and there was a guest speaker, Dawson Church. He's an author of scientific books, won a lot of awards. And he talked about how, I'm going to forget the word again, so Pedro can help me out. Ruminate. We ruminate on the negative. We hold these negative thoughts and we let them spiral us downward. And he talks about how these neurons, as they're firing with these negative thoughts, and they will attract to each other and they become wired. They fire and then they wire and create new neural pathways in our brain. And the more thoughts we have of that nature, the more distress we feel over a trauma, the more distress we will feel. It just keeps perpetuating. And what does it take, he said, to get these firing neurons to wire? 12 seconds. 12 seconds. So we have to disrupt it when we feel it, when we become aware of it. It's why it's so important to stay aware of what you're thinking. Stay aware of your thoughts. Notice, as Mary Morrissey says, notice what you're noticing. Notice what thoughts are going on in your head. The thoughts aren't in charge. You are, as the observer of those thoughts. The thoughts just come and go, like 60,000 of them a day. But we get to choose which ones to hold. So Dawson Church was saying that of all the traumas that people go through, 2/3 of them actually grow from the traumas. That they disrupt those thoughts and they have post-traumatic growth, which can be very encouraging for all of us. That we don't have to spiral down when something traumatic happens to us. That we are resilient enough to lift ourselves up, to change our thought pattern, to try something different. We have that capability. Mel Schwartz says this, and this doesn't feel like the right time for this quote, but I'm going to say it since I brought it up anyway. When we ask ourselves how we know something to be true, most often we will admit that we can't be certain, but that it's probably based on either our limited personal experience or our belief. Embracing the uncertainty of not knowing for sure is not only advantageous on a personal level, but also resembles the emerging quantum worldview. Uncertainty opens the doorway for new possibilities and new levels of inquiry. I love that because Benjamin Zander, in this book, The Art of Possibility, he's a conductor. He conducts orchestras. And in it, he's talking about how conductors are usually people that they want their way. They want the music, it's their interpretation of the music. It's going to go the way they want it to go. It's going to sound how they want it to sound. It's all about the glory of the conductor. And he somehow had a shift when he was realizing this. You know, on the album covers, it's the conductor on the album covers, not all the musicians. And he realized the conductors don't even make a sound. And they take all the glory for the sound of the orchestra. So he has this shift, and he decides, instead of thinking or asking the question, how great am I? He decides, how can I engage my musicians more? So he decides to put a white blank sheet of paper on everybody's music stand. And he tells them, I want your thoughts. I want your suggestions. I want your interpretations. Write whatever you want to write and turn this in every day when they're rehearsing. And he said he thought he would get a whole bunch of criticism. He said he got a few, but not a lot. Most of it was inspiring, encouraging, great insights, which he decided to try. And he said, the music never sounded better because they were all participating, because these silent conductors, who he called each of those white pieces of paper silent conductors, they had a say in how the music was interpreted and played. We have a silent conductor inside of us. Each one of us has a silent conductor, that divine essence of you suggesting quietly, silently, this way, think this thought. We can listen to that or not. It's up to us. If we listen to it, our lives can be uplifted and expanded and broadened. And if we don't, we still live the same day over and over and over in our patterns. Now, Mel says in this chapter, one of the practices you can do, we can all try this, when you hear those negative thoughts, do this. Shh. So I want everybody to do that. Shh. Yeah. So if you see somebody in Foss Hall and they're shushing a negative thought, go, bravo. Good for you. Good for you. Because we're invited to live life fully and freely and abundantly and joyfully, and that's what each of us deserves, because we're here. We're here now to live that life. The invitation is there, and the choice is ours. So, are you ready to be the boss of your own thoughts? Are you ready to shh when those negative ones want to come in and take over? You get to choose. So, this week, practice shh. And you're not the boss of me. You can do both ways, the quiet way and you're not the boss of me. It can make a difference. Hold the uplifting thoughts, the loving thoughts, the beautiful thoughts, because that's what each of you deserves. So, peace be with you. Namaste.